Hi, Mystery resurfaced here. Today, I'm going to explain a 2004 American dark fantasy action adventure film. Title Van Helsing. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins in 1887 Transylvania. Angry crowd heading towards a castle. Dr. Victor Frankenstein, supported by his assistant Igor and Count Vladislaus Dracula, creates a monster. However, Dracula kills Dr. Frankenstein, and as the angry crowd storms into the castle, the monster flees to a windmill with Frankenstein's body. But the crowd sees him heading towards the windmill. The crowd follows him and burns down the windmill, seemingly killing the monster. A year later, monster hunter Gabriel Van Helsing travels to Paris to catch Mr. Hyde, and after a brawl between them he kills Mr. Hyde. Helsing pursues evil on behalf of the Holy Church, which has protected mankind from time immemorial. Later, he heads towards the Vatican City, and meets the priest, Van Helsing, who remembers nothing before he was found crawling up the steps of a church, hopes to earn pardon for his forgotten sins and regain his memory. The priest tells him, he has been ordered by the Vatican to search out and destroy Count Vladislaus Dracula, an assignment that doesn't make Van Helsing very happy. He is tired of killing monsters for the church, only to be branded by the public as a murderer with a price on his head. Later the priest explains that this assignment is important because, 450 years ago, a Transylvanian knight named Valerius the Elder promised God that his family would never rest nor enter heaven until they killed Dracula. However, Dracula still lives, but only two of Valerius' descendants, Princess Anna and Prince Belkan, remain. The Valerius family is running out of time, and the church is committed to saving their souls. So, they armed with only a scrap of a picture, rings of garlic, holy water, a silver stake, a crucifix, an automatic crossbow, and Friar Karl, the Q of the Vatican, Van Helsing takes off for Transylvania. While in Transylvania, Anna and Belkan attempt to kill a werewolf controlled by Dracula, but it falls with Belkan into a deep river from the cliff. In the next scene Van Helsing, along with Karl, arrive in Transylvania at a village, as the villagers don't like strangers. While Princess Anna inquires about their business there. Soon Van Helsing notices three harpies flying towards them, and shoots at them with an automatic crossbow. They are Dracula's three brides, Alira, Marischka, and Verona. It's clear that they are trying to kill Anna. However, they succeed in carrying her off several times, but Van Helsing manages to get her back. He finally kills Marischka by dipping his crossbow in holy water before shooting her with a dart. But the villagers are angry with Van Helsing for killing Marischka. They explain that the vampires only kill 1 or 2 a month to fulfill their needs. But now, they will kill more people out of revenge. Dracula gets furious and isn't happy about it either, but also he is now short one bride. Later, being grateful that Van Helsing saved her life and killed Marischka, Anna takes Van Helsing and Karl back to the castle, where the Valerius family has lived for hundreds of years, including Dracula's human death. That evening, Anna wants to go out hunting vampire, but Van Helsing asks her to wait until daylight, and sprays her with knockout spray. Later, when Anna awakens, the halls are dark and Van Helsing is nowhere to be found. But still, senses someone is there. It's a werewolf, but not just any werewolf. It's her brother, Belkan. However, Belkan was bitten by the werewolf on the way down, but he survived the fall, and now he is a werewolf too. When the moon suddenly goes behind a cloud, Belkan changes from werewolf back to himself just long enough to warn Anna. Then the moon comes out, and he changes back into a werewolf and lunges at her. Soon Van Helsing appears and fires a shot at Belkan, but he jumps out the window. Van Helsing follows. Just when Van Helsing gets a clear shot at Belkan, Anna stops him to let him know that Dracula has a cure for werewolfism. Van Helsing agrees to help Anna look for the antidote and try to save her brother. They both follow Belkan's trail, which leads them to Castle Frankenstein, where Dracula, Igor, and the Dwergi have strapped Belkan to Dr. Frankenstein's machine and are trying to collect his life energy to put life into Dracula's babies. Lightning strikes and Belkan's life force flows into the baby vampires who start to hatch. Thousands of them. While Van Helsing starts shooting at seeing this, Dracula gets really mad and jumps up to attack Van Helsing. But Van Helsing stabs Dracula with the silver stake, but it doesn't work. While Alira, Verona, and the babies fly into the village so that the brides can teach the babies how to feed. Suddenly, all the vampire babies start to explode. However, the life transform into Dracula's offspring hasn't been successful. While they try to escape from Castle Frankenstein, Belkin turn again into a werewolf and try to kill Van Helsing and Anna, but he falls into the river. Anna and Van Helsing escape from fall. Later they head towards the burnt windmill. While having a sip they suddenly falls into a subterranean cave where the Frankenstein monster has been hiding. Van Helsing shoots him with a tranquilizer dart but refuses to kill him, because he can sense that the monster is not evil. Before he passes out, the monster explains that he is the key to Dracula's research, that he is the one thing that Dracula needs in order to bring life to his babies. Even though the last hatchlings died, Dracula has thousands more waiting birth. Suddenly, they notice that they are being watched by Belkin. Knowing that Dracula will soon know about the monster, Van Helsing tries to take the Frankenstein monster back to Rome for protection, but they are attacked by Verona, Illyria, and Belkin. Van Helsing kills Verona and gets a silver bullet into Belkin, who later dies in Anna's arms. Unfortunately, Belkin also managed to bite Van Helsing. Illyria picks up Anna and flies her back to Dracula while Van Helsing, Karl, and the monster are forced to walk. They meet up with Illyria again. She invites them to a Halloween masquerade ball during which they can trade the monster for Anna. Van Helsing tranquilizes the monster and locks him in a church while he and Karl go to the ball. At the ball, while Dracula dances with Anna, he asks her to become his bride, but Anna refuses. Van Helsing emerges from nowhere and rescues Anna, but their escape is thwarted when Igor brings in the Frankenstein monster. Everyone at the ball turns into vampires and goes after Van Helsing, Karl, and Anna, forcing them to jump out of the window. While Van Helsing, Anna, and Karl get back to Transylvania, Dracula has cleared out of Castle Frankenstein and moved to no one knows where. They go to Anna's castle, where Karl explains that Dracula is the son of Valerius the Elder. When he was killed in 1462, Dracula made a deal with the devil and was given a new life that could only be sustained by drinking blood. That's when Valerius the Elder went to Rome and bargained away his family's right to enter heaven until he killed Dracula. Dracula being his son, however, Valerius was unable to kill him, so he banished him to an icy fortress through a door with no means of escape, until the devil gave wings to Dracula. So where is this door? Anna reveals that her father spent hours staring at a particular picture. Van Helsing realizes that picture holds the key to the door. On the door is an inscription in Latin which Karl tries to read but cannot finish because a piece is missing. Van Helsing remembers the piece of picture that Cardinal Genet gave him before he left Rome. They try, it fits. When they read the inscription aloud, the picture changes into a mirror which allows them to walk through into the icy fortress which is Dracula's true castle. They enter a long hallway in which the ceiling and walls are lined with pods containing vampire offspring waiting to be alive. They also see the Frankenstein monster encased in a block of ice with only his head sticking out. The monster sees Van Helsing and tells him that Dracula does have a cure for werewolfism. Van Helsing wonders why Dracula would have an antidote. Karl remembers seeing another painting that showed a werewolf killing a vampire. Now it's clear that only a werewolf can kill Dracula, and Van Helsing is going to turn into one tonight at the stroke of midnight. The plan is to let Van Helsing transform and kill Dracula, and then Anna and Karl can inject him with the antidote at the last minute. While Van Helsing goes in search of Dracula, Anna and Karl force Igor to lead them to the antidote. Igor shows them a syringe stored in a jar of acidic liquid. It is the antidote, but before they can get it, Igor locks them in the room. Illyria suddenly appears. Anna tosses the jar at her. It crashes on the floor, and the splash burns Illyria's face. Anna tosses more of the liquid at the bars on the door, and it melts them. While Anna keeps Illyria busy, Karl takes the antidote and goes looking for Van Helsing. However, Van Helsing has discovered Dracula's laboratory. The Frankenstein monster has been strapped on the roof, and Dracula is attempting to drain his life into his offspring. Van Helsing makes his way to the roof, but before the monster can be freed, lightning strikes and sends his life force down through the offspring pods. The baby vampires begin to awaken. Just as the Frankenstein monster gets free, Dracula changes into a vampire bat and attacks Van Helsing. The monster is struck again by a bolt of lightning that sends him flying over the edge of the roof. While going down, he manages to grab onto a cable and knock Igor off the bridge where he's been chasing Karl with a cattle prod. The monster swings through a window into the room where Anna and Alira are fighting. As the monster holds Alira at bay, Anna uses the cable to swing back to the laboratory. On the way, Carl tosses her the antidote. Alira catches up with Anna. While Alira boasts about how she's going to drink Anna's blood, Anna grabs a spike and thrusts it through Alira's heart. Just then the clock strikes midnight. Van Helsing changes into a werewolf and attacks Dracula. Just as Van Helsing has Dracula by the throat, the moon goes behind a cloud and Van Helsing changes back into himself. Dracula takes this moment to inform Van Helsing that it was he who murdered Dracula back in 1462. Suddenly, the moon comes back out and Van Helsing turns into a werewolf again and bites up Dracula's neck. Dracula crumbles into dust as do all of his baby vampires. At that moment, Anna runs into the room with the antidote. Van Helsing jumps at her. Carl also arrives and opens the silver stake, ready to plunge it into Van Helsing. But Anna was successful. She injected the antidote into Van Helsing just before she died, and Van Helsing is returning to himself. Van Helsing and Carl hold a cremation for Anna at sea. The monster departs by raft, and Helsing sees Anna's spirit reuniting with her family in heaven. Van Helsing and Carl ride off into the sunset together. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.